Not fun. We have continuity. We do.
You're never going to believe this. This has nothing to do with my running issue. If it walks like a horse, and if it clops like a horse, and it neighs like a horse, it's probably a horse and not a zebra.
What does that mean? What could that be? Okay, well, I don't know.
This car has always started, it has always driven, it has never had a failure like this. Until one day, it did. Welcome back to Skelly's Garage. My name is Sam, and I know that this is not the episode that either of us wanted to see. This is episode 2.5. Last time we saw each other, I was doing a lot of work on this car to get it hopefully to a drivable state. We replaced the components of the cooling system, the hoses, the expansion tank, and in fact, that's gone beautifully. There are no leaks, nothing of that nature. However, the other thing that I did, which was replace the DMEs because it was running very, very poorly, that didn't really seem to solve the issue. As I mentioned in that episode, I have had some concerns about the way that the oxygen sensor wiring is in the car right now. So what we need to do is we need to figure out whether it's the wiring that's destroyed, whether it's the oxygen sensors that are damaged, or perhaps a combination of the two. Because I can't do anything else to FAF the 540 until this is running and driving correctly. I don't want to wind up without a car. So right now I'm daily driving the 540i, which is an okay experience, but I'd really rather be driving this on the daily because it's much more compliant. It's much better suited for the roads here. Anyway, we're going to figure this out. And this episode is probably going to take a few days to shoot, so you're probably going to see me in different clothes. Right now I'm wearing this sweatshirt, but I'm sure that I will be wearing others as well. So one of the things that I hate doing the most is guessing. So far, I've made the assumption based on the fact that there were melted wires, or rather melted sheathing on the O2 wires, that, you know, if it walks like a horse, and if it clops like a horse, and it neighs like a horse, it's probably a horse and not a zebra. However, I'm going to validate this. I have my multimeter. I'm going to check continuity and make sure that I have actual continuity between the harness at the DME and the connectors at the oxygen sensor side. Because if I have continuity and nothing out of the ordinary, then my harness is good. And I may actually just need new O2 sensors. But O2 sensors wouldn't shut the whole engine down. I don't know. I think there's something more still, but this is gonna hopefully help uncover something. Armed with my multimeter, I found that the wiring was in fact continuous between the ends of the harness. That, of course, doesn't necessarily prove anything because passing a continuity test doesn't rule out a short. But it does mean that we can trust the Lambda values that the car reports with a reasonable level of confidence. In the process of testing the continuity, however, I did make an interesting discovery, even though I can't explain what its significance is yet. The fuse for the oxygen sensor heating circuit, located in the DME box, was blown. This is a 30 amp fuse, and I'm happy that the fuse blew rather than setting the car on fire, but sadly it was a red herring. Replacing it didn't make any difference, but I didn't think that it would. So the two upstream oxygen sensors, one of them is barely reading any voltage at all. Sometimes it will spike and show some voltage, but most of the time it's reading like 0.02, 0.03 volts. Looking at the other ones, this one is the odd one out. But if only the oxygen sensor on bank 1 is bad and the one on bank 2 seems okay, wouldn't misfires only be present in bank 1? Because I have misfires in both banks. The worst cylinders are 3, 4, and 5. 1, 2, and 6 seem to be having the least problems. I don't think I ever actually explained what happened. Like I've said before, this car has always been reliable. This car has always started, it has always driven, it has never ever had failure like this. Until one day, it did. Based on what I'm seeing here, and again, I still need to do a little bit of research on how the Lambda voltage values actually correlate with one another. I'm starting to believe that the bank 1 oxygen sensor has gone bad. It's not responding in the way that the other oxygen sensors are. So I will probably need to buy another oxygen sensor. The data from the computer and from our testing of the harness is telling us that something is wrong actually with the oxygen sensors and not the wiring. When I first tested the sensors and I saw that the rear ones after the cat had greater than 2 volts, that should have told me that those were faulty. They operate on a range between 0 and 1 volt. Anything greater than that, the oxygen sensor is broken. Anything that stays artificially too low probably means the same thing. I'm not super concerned about shotgunning oxygen sensors into this car. It has 270,000 miles, 435,000 kilometers on it. I don't know when these last were changed. They were certainly not changed during my ownership. And so that means that they have at least 50,000 miles on them. So it might be a bit early, but it might be completely overdue. The only way for us to know is when we take these out, we'll see how they look. You need one of these wrenches. This is an oxygen sensor wrench, which allows the harness to go up, the wiring of the oxygen sensor to go up and through it so that you don't destroy it. Fun update on this little plastic partition here. The first time I ordered it, I misread the parts diagram, so what I received was something completely different. It was actually the insulation behind it, not the thing itself. So that was a bust. But then I ordered it again. And finally, the right part did arrive, but it was broken. So I had to send it back, and hopefully when the new one arrives, it will not be broken. Hopefully. But you know how it is. Okay, so removing the oxygen sensor is very simple. You simply slide this on. Aha! That's particularly exciting. I knew it wasn't going to be that simple. That's disappointing. The socket that I got for the oxygen sensor is too big, and it's the wrong one, so I'm going to go see if I can find the right one. Let's find out what size this is. Alright, update. While this oxygen sensor socket was the incorrect one, it turned out I did have another one. Now this is technically not a oxygen sensor socket, it's more for removing suspension components, but the principle is the same. The idea behind these is that you're able to put a hold in place while you rotate this. But it should allow us to get the harness out of the way. So this is what the new oxygen sensor looks like. It simply slides on and then it rotates. Ah, yes. I could definitely see some signs of melting sheathing here. I don't know how to read these, but this one looks to be quite aged. I wonder if this has a date code somewhere? I mean, there is certainly a thick layer of corrosion on it. It certainly appears to be. So I can't tell for sure, but I think that it's probably a good idea to replace this anyway. So we'll do that. Obviously, make sure you remove the cap. I'm just gonna lightly tighten this for the moment because I don't know what the torque rating is, and we'll do that in a moment. Okay. So the principle here is the same. Just slip it over it, make sure it's secure. You don't want to accidentally strip it. And off it comes. And the second oxygen sensor is out. It looks exactly like the first one. I mean, again, I don't know how to read these, but they certainly look like they have been in there for some time. I got a nice torque wrench. I'm really, really pleased with it. It's a Tecton of some sort. It wasn't very expensive, but I have been really enjoying using it. I haven't used it on camera yet, but I did use it to replace the brakes on my partner's Camry, so it's great. By the way, Tecton, if you're watching this, please send me more tools. That click is just, oh, look at it. Oh, I love it, so good. And remember kids, if you like your torque wrench, set it to the lowest setting once you're done. We need to figure out which of these two harnesses go to which wire. And because these wires aren't labeled in any meaningful way and they have the same wiring colors, what people typically do is they'll put like a zip tie or something like that, or maybe they'll mark them with a marker. But I didn't do that because I wasn't sure that this harness was even going to remain in the car. Instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to check continuity at the DME for what I know to be the wires for oxygen sensor number 1 and figure out which one of these it's continuous to. That will then, through the process of elimination, tell me which harness is for oxygen sensor number 1, which oxygen sensor is for number 2. I also plan to take this pick tool and look through the oxygen sensor harness on the DME side and remove the pins for the oxygen sensors after the catalytic converter. I care about the environment, yes, very much. That's why I have a catalytic converter on this car. But I need to isolate the issue, and this is how I'm going to do it. Hello.
Oh, hi.
How are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm good. How was your holiday?
It was great. How about yourself?
It was pretty good. There we go. All right, so this is bank 1. Do you see what conditions I have to work in? It's properly seated. That means this is bank 2. So now that we've identified our wires for the oxygen sensors that we are going to connect, what we need to do is we need to depin the harness here. So 16 and 22, 13, 14, 15, 16. We push down on the tab and just depin it. 16 is out, go, and the wire comes out. We need to remove for bank 2, so those pins are 18 and 24. Now we need to do 24. Cooperate! Now that we have the signal wires unraveled, we need to remove the oxygen sensor heating circuit wires because I don't want them putting power to the DME. Click. There we go. We have our connector, baby. All right. Great.
Now it was time to see if our fix worked. I loaded up my computer and created a tuning file for the car that would use only the front oxygen sensors. Since even on the normal tune, the rear oxygen sensors are only monitors and not capable of modifying the mixture at all, the only thing that this would do was prevent an unnecessary check engine light and reduce noise. Once it was flashed and all adaptations, errors, and the like were reset, it was time to see if our problems would finally go away. They didn't. The car still ran terribly, and I even disconnected the mass airflow sensor since that would force the car to run off predetermined air-fuel maps, but sadly, that also did not make anything better. The two oxygen sensors had wildly different readings, and being reasonably certain that they were in good working condition, this was starting to point the issue to another area entirely: the engine. Still, I decided to take the car for a quick ride around the block just to see if something had gotten better.
We're misfiring. Watch this. See this bulb is burned out? Slap! And the bulb's back. There's still definitely something off. I can't say whether it's running better because it's still not running well. When I give it gas at low RPMs, it's very clearly misfiring, which is disappointing. I think that the next thing that I can really realistically do is connect a smoke machine to it, see if I have some sort of massive air leak somewhere that I didn't have before. When I was removing the intake piping to get to the coolant hoses, I looked at them and they all looked okay. So unless I have a tremendous vacuum leak somewhere, I don't know. I like doing my own work. I like figuring things out. But I realize that I don't always have the equipment or the skills or knowledge to do some work. I feel very confident that I should be able to figure out what's going on with this car. What's going on with this engine, why it's treating, like, why I can't get it to run right, and why it very suddenly stopped working correctly. That's the critical thing. As I said before, this wasn't a gradual degradation of performance. It was overnight. And overnight means that there has to be a smoking gun. And it's not intermittent. It went from working perfectly to not working. So, I don't know. After giving it some thought, I think that what we're facing is a vacuum leak somewhere on the intake manifold. When I replaced the CCV last year, I did take a look at it, but I wasn't looking for anything out of the ordinary, so it's very possible that I could have missed it. To make diagnosis a little bit simpler, rather than taking everything out and looking at it intensely, I'm going to have a smoke test performed. Now, since I don't have a smoke testing machine, I have to pay a shop to do that. And hopefully we find something conclusive. The other thing that I'm going to have the shop do is perform a cylinder leak down test. Now that's different from a instant compression test in that the leak down measures how much compression your cylinder actually loses over a period of time. If you lose too much compression, it could point to something in your engine internally being at fault. For example, bent valves, which would be rather unpleasant to deal with. But there is no way to know for sure until we actually do it. All that said, I wish I had a better answer for you other than, well, I still don't know what the problem is, but I'm looking into it. I've still fixed a lot of important things here, and in one way or another, I have made this car progressively less broken, but I just haven't done so in the way that I wanted to yet. But we're gonna get there. I'm confident of it. So with that said, I'm gonna park this episode here. Once I get results back from the shop, I'll decide on what the next steps are, and we'll go from there. And I'm sure that you'll see this big gray beast grace your screens once again. In the meantime, I'm going to try to do as many simple one-and-done type repairs and improvements on FAF the 540i while I daily drive it, so that it can be a more pleasant place to be. Oh, and if you're wondering about the Porsche that you saw in the last video, well, I have an update on that as well. A full video will come eventually, but I am actually going to give that car to my partner who has been wanting to get into this automotive hobby of ours. Maybe they'll even make a cameo. But either way, we're really not going to get to it for some time yet. This car needs to be fixed, FAF needs to get some significant work done, and then we'll probably start working on the 944 in the spring. Anyway, I can't thank you enough for watching these videos, for liking them, for commenting on them, for subscribing to the channel. It really means a lot to me that I could make these videos and have you watch them and grow the channel at the same time. I love doing this kind of thing, and sometimes it doesn't go according to plan. In fact, most of the time it doesn't go according to plan, which is why we have episode 2.5. But I'm glad that you're here on this journey with me. So stay tuned. Follow the Instagram if you want to see more frequent updates, and we'll see you on the next time. Until then, this has been Skelly's Garage. I'm Sam, and I'll see you later.